Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. Yay! Well, today we have Lisa. I cannot wait for this conversation. Lisa, you know, I always like to have my guests introduce themselves first. And so I want to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first off, I have to mention that Karen and I met electronically, which is so funny because I feel like I saw you online and could feel your energy like through your LinkedIn profile. And yeah, so it's just funny when you meet a good soul. So I'm really excited to be here because even today, I'm like really excited because we both have, high energy. And I feel like, gosh, sometimes you just need a little bit of that. So
Yes, I love
the
it.
inter the introductions are always hard because sometimes I'm like, yeah, what am I? But in my day job, if I were to say what I actually do, I'm a speaker, facilitator, and coach. And then I add to the end joy connoisseur. And my business,
Woo!
yeah, right. And my business tagline is have good ripple effect. Everything you say and do is a ripple, happy or crappy, your choice. And to give you a little bit of my, I guess, personal side, I have two kids and a husband, and I live in Iowa. So we live surrounded by cornfields.
I love that. And you may remember that I'm a fellow Midwesterner, originally from Minnesota. So you are a kindred spirit in that Midwest component. I know, I know they're different states, but
Yeah.
similar near each other. But I'd
Yes.
say that our energy is probably more matched than our geography.
Yeah. So
Personally.
true.
Well, you know, we love to talk about confidence here. We, who's the quintessential we, but I love to talk about it with my guests. And I would love to hear from you about anything that you would like to share specifically around how perhaps you either found your voice or even better, starting with where you may have lost your voice. If there was an
Mm.
example that you'd be willing to give, let's say lost and then found.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's great. Um, well, if I back up real quick, I was born to a family of introverts, and I'm probably the most extreme extrovert that I've ever met. And so I feel like I spent my childhood kind of bumping around, being like, "Oh, I'm not like you. Okay, I'm not like you," and I have way too much energy, and almost a sense of fascination, I guess. I got to college. There was a woman, I did an internship in high school, and she said, "Where are you going? Where are you going to college?" And I'm like, "I'm not." My family was really, I guess, intentional with money. And so, my parents were like, "Is this going to pay off? Is it not?" And she goes, "Oh, honey, you're going to college." And I think back to when we think about confidence and communication and maybe a little bit of good ripple effect. That
Yes.
was one of the first big ripples, I think, where someone almost borrowed me their confidence, where she really said, "No, you might be a little unique and adventurous and I don't know, extroverted, but you should do this, like you're worth it." And I think that's probably the first time where I really felt like I found my voice.
Wow.
And now in the corporate world, I spent a lot of years in project management and operations, and kind of similar, right? I would kind of bump into other leaders and I'm like, "Okay, I'm not like you, I'm not like you." So it's been almost a journey to find myself.
Hmm.
And I think I was in some ways looking for pattern. And then finally I was just like, "You know what? There isn't one.
Oh,
Like, I'm just going to be me."
yes. Well, what is that phrase I love? Why are you trying so hard to fit in when you were born to stand out?
Yeah. Right.
I love that. And it makes me think about when one of my first jobs in HR was for an architecture firm. And I was probably 28 or 30, somewhere in that late 20s, early 30s. And I remember most of the employees were guys and most of them in their 50s and 60s and some upwards of 70. And I remember one guy came into my office and I ran HR and he said, because I had kind of spiked hair at the time,
Yeah.
and so I relate a lot to you more from the perspective of just yeah, just being a little bit different, but I'd say different in a good way, like from the
Yeah.
because I remember him looking at me, and for those of you, most of you are listening, so you can't see me, but like he put his hands up kind of by his head, and because I had spiked hair, and he goes, I mean, you've got this kind of look. He didn't quite know what to say, but he said it was a compliment. It was basically,
Yeah.
you're kind of funky, but you're really good at your job. And I appreciate that. And it was one of those moments where I thought, oh, it was so validating, especially because my experience has been with my dad as the authority figure in the home. And that's
Mm.
what I learned, to have somebody that actually recognized me for my uniqueness and acknowledged and validated my expertise and ultimately value, similar to what this person
Yeah.
identified for you, to go, no, no, like you're going places. And sometimes
Yeah.
when we have those, whether they're informal or formal mentors in our lives, it's so great. So
It
thank
really
you for
is.
sharing that. And what would you say is a time when you, whether it's now or earlier, when you were really, when you feel like I am in the zone of confidence?
I think this is going to seem maybe a little bit, I don't know if it's contrarian, but I think that one of my superpowers is curiosity.
Ah,
And I'm always curious, like, why did people do what they did? Or for those of you who can't see it, I give out these blue glasses that say "Have good ripple effect," and I feel like I just want to try everyone's glasses on and be like, can I see what you see for a minute? Like,
oh,
I just want to put myself in your shoes, and I think that I don't know, skill or just natural tendency has really given me confidence, and then also it makes me feel in the zone. So when I'm connecting with people, whether it's for business or people that reported to me when I led a team, I really do think that that was like me in the zone of, in order to figure something out or move forward, you need to know, like, and trust me just a little bit. And how do I get you to know, like, and trust me? Well, I put myself in your shoes, right? And I start to be curious about what you did and why you did it and how I can be helpful to it. That's really, I think, when I'm in the zone.
ah, Lisa, I love talking to you. It's so great. I mean, again, so simpatico. And that is a tweetable quote, what you said. Can I see what you see? And
Thank
oh,
you.
let's see what I see. I love that. And the fact that you have these physical glasses, and it's funny because I shared with you earlier, and I haven't shared this with anybody publicly yet about my move.
Yeah.
Yet it has been so fun, and specifically about visualizing what you want. And do you know that
Mhm.
on my vision board, the main photo, because I have magazines on a canvas, the main
Yeah.
photo is a pair of glasses that are pink colored. And it's
Ooh.
like someone's holding them. You just see the glasses with the hands and
Yeah.
overseeing a beach, but it's very subtle. Like there's, in other words, it's enough that you see the glasses of, okay, what are you gonna,
Yeah.
basically the invitation to me is, what lens are you going to choose to look through? And then the other side of it is, again, it's not even a scene. You just see that it's a subtle, like kind of beach. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm getting,
Clear water. Yeah.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
enough that you go, like it leaves enough to the imagination. And so the idea of
Love that.
you bringing up this and having these, the physical, I know, yeah, most people that are listening can't see it, but what a great analogy of even anybody listening to imagine that they are putting on the lens that other people are looking through. That's powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is. I mean, when you start to see from other people's lenses, you're like, "Oh, that's why." Like, it makes so much more sense. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we're truly all trying to bump around and do is, I always say we're sense making, right? Like making sense of the world and politics and, even the economy, and we're all trying to go around sense making. Well, what better way, right, than to see it from the other person's perspective? And I love that you have glasses on your vision board. That
I
like made my
know.
day.
Oh, I'll show you later. So fun.
Okay.
So fun. We have lots of show and tell, I think, with both of our individual businesses. So tell us about a time. I'd love to get an example in your work life
Okay.
where you were coaching someone, and perhaps what was the transformation that you took them through? Like where they were before you started working with them and after, whether it's a team or whether it's an individual?
Yeah, ooh, this is good. Gosh, I feel like, when you have some examples, you're like, I could do this one or this one. I think the biggest transformation for me was with the one of the first teams that I led. And I inherited a team, right? Much like many of us do when we take a leadership role. There are people that are already existing, there are spots to fill, and as people move in and out. And I think the biggest transformation that I saw was truly through culture build. So I do a lot with teams on engagement and culture and communication. And though you can't see my hands, but I always say, this is our ecosystem. And I've got my hands cupped like as if they were holding water. And I say, it's ours to build, maintain, and protect. If we are going to invite someone into our work family, they cannot pollute our waters. And I almost created a transformation through language. So it took me about 3 years to really get people to be thinking about, is that good ripple effect? Were you treating people nice? Like, tell me how that was good ripple effect. And then all of a sudden, like I said, about 3 years, I started to um, sit back and watch, and they would use the language back to me. Like, well, I don't want to invite this person into our team, into this role, because I don't think they're good for our ecosystem. And it was like the moment where I remember sitting there thinking, like, I could get on top of the desk and just like party, because they understood the idea that you show up in the world. And I always say, you happen to the world, not the other way around. And
Mm,
they were realizing that our ecosystem, the culture, the group that we were creating was ours to protect. And that was a really powerful thing of working through not only what do we believe, so we did team statements to core values to, what do we want our ecosystem to look like? And then from a one-on-one coaching, I do similar things where we talk about ripple effect, not only from where we are, but if I always say, what's on the horizon? And then how do we get there? So we fill in some of the middle. And yeah, those are probably my two examples that come to mind of true transformation on the culture side with teams, and then individually just like make a big splash. Like, what
oh,
splash are you looking to make?
oh my gosh, you have so many amazing analogies.
Good or
Fantastic.
bad, right? I laugh.
So when you were a kid, did you think this is what you would be doing?
No, no, I laugh. There's this big poster of me. I thought, well, which is silly, but I thought I wanted to be a farmer for a while, which my parents didn't live on the farm, but most of my relatives farmed. And I love animals. So I think I thought I would do that. And then, like I said, really quick, I was listening to a keynote speaker a couple weeks ago at a conference, and he was talking about how he was a doorman in New York City, and how he truly believes in order to be something, you have to see you, in order to be it, you have to see it. And
Mhm.
as he was opening up these doors for these people in New York City, he was starting to hear about different jobs and businesses and like all these things around him. And he goes, I truly couldn't dream because I hadn't seen it. Like I couldn't be it because I hadn't seen it. And I feel like maybe that was a little bit of me where I wasn't sure what I was going to be because I hadn't really seen how I could use my skills. Like I said, growing up in a small farm town, the jobs are pretty like what I would consider standard. And every time I looked at one, I was like, I don't know if I'm that or that or that. So I really wasn't sure, but it's been a great ride.
Wow. It's oh gosh, coming into our own is so fun. And then what was it like? Let me think about, or I want to ask you to think about the first gig or engagement, something that you got when you were able to really be in that zone of genius that you are so good at in your professional life. And I don't know if you
Yeah.
have a specific example for that, but I'm really curious if you can describe the feeling of confidence in what you do.
Yeah, it's interesting. So okay, I'm just going to go to what I was doing this morning. So this morning I was with a group of a landscaping company, about 16 to 20, mostly men, right? A lot of these guys are on lawnmowers and fertilizer trucks, and they're hauling rock, and they come together quarterly for their all team meeting.
Mhm.
And I think that for me, being in the zone is really when I get to see others' light bulbs go off, right? So I have my husband and I 8 years ago, quick side story, started a joy calendar because we were slightly miserable. So we were overworked. burnt out, and we looked at each other and I was like, what if joy is our job? Like, what if we could schedule it like we schedule oil changes and doctor's appointments? So we created, and actually I have this is my daughter's joy calendar. It's super cute. So it just says
Oh
joy.
gosh.
And she
Cute.
does things like
Describe
tie
it.
dye, McDonald's play place,
Yeah.
game night. So we started to really put together ideas of things that we wanted to do to chase joy. And if you don't have a joy calendar, you should get one,
Yeah.
or create one.
Tell us about how to create one.
Yeah. So I will here in just one second. And because I'll lead you to what I was doing this morning. So I was with this group of guys that really, to be honest, I'm out of their element, right? I mean, they're looking at me like, okay, I'm kind of like voluntold to be here. But I led them through two exercises. One was creating a joy calendar, and I have on my website, you can download some joy ideas if you're wanting to start a calendar. I usually say start with a blank sheet of paper and write down all the things that you wish you could do if time and money wasn't a factor. And
Mm.
then go back and start circling, well, which ones do I want to do this month? Right? Like start really kind of whittling down. There's probably something on there that you can do. And then I do oftentimes lead groups through joy challenges where I give them like 5 or 6 different things. Like if you had a 1 hour lunch break, what could you do for joy? It's like simple things of sometimes we forget to put joy in our lunch or, before work or after work. I'm like, well, put it there, like create something worth doing before you leave for work. I think one of the guys this morning, one of the challenges I gave him was a $10 challenge. If you had $10 and you could create joy, what would you do? And he wrote down, buy a huge slushie. And I was like, that takes me back to childhood right there. Like I am with you on the slushy situation. So I think there are moments like that where I can lead folks or groups through whether it's just an exploration of maybe what's possible. That's where I feel like I'm like, I'm in the zone.
That is so fun. So fun. Oh my gosh. I like 5 things that I want to say. And one of the things that comes to mind that I love that is all about what you do, I think what we both do is that intentionality,
Mhm.
the joy piece of, so much of our life is filled with choices that we don't think
Yeah.
about. We feel like a lot of times I've seen this, and I also I have a company that I do work with around culture, and the idea of what experiences are we creating and what is ours to own.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, that's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, say more, say
It,
more.
it's interesting. So one of the other things that my husband and I have on our joy calendar, this is so funny that you would say this, by the way, um, is we go all over the world looking for Michelin star restaurants. And the reason why we go on the hunt for Michelin star restaurants is because it's not about cost, but they're graded on things like, would you do it again? Was it worth it for the time and money? Could you tell the personality of the chef? Was it truly an experience that you remember, right? And so we've gone for years, we go all over the world. There's about 200 restaurants in the US that are Michelin star. There's like 10 to 20 in Vegas. So if anyone goes to Vegas, go there.
Oh,
Um, and I actually run teams through an exercise where they get to evaluate the experiences that they're having from a Michelin star grading scorecard. So they really get to sit down and say, the experiences that I'm either contributing to, a part of, or actually creating, right? I'm in charge of this meeting. I'm like, if you're saying this meeting should have been an email, like that's a red flag. Like you could change that. You could make the meeting better or get rid of it. And so to your point, I think exactly there's choice, but there's also how do I show up in an experience or how do I create one that's worth having?
yeah, that's so powerful. And how often we look to others, or just by default, we don't think, I mean, this
Yes.
is part of my story that I felt like I needed permission for some of these
Yeah.
things, as opposed to
Yeah.
recognizing I can actually choose this. And a lot of it's funny because do you know that I just wrote a book?
Okay, I saw that it just came out. So literally it was on my list to like go and get. So I'm excited to or
Oh,
like
awesome.
yeah,
Well,
like
and
read it.
it'll be on paperback shortly in the next week or
Okay.
so. But I bring this up because one of my entire chapters is about saying yes to the adventure. And I started with one of my closest friends ever since high school has said to me continually, good things always, you just always happen to be in these amazing situations. And there was one time where I met a guy on my travels that where I was facilitating in Malaysia, and he was from Thailand.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to be in Thailand. So I said, hey, you want to host me next week? I'll be in Bangkok. And he ended up hosting me and
Oh,
taking
wow.
over. But that's just one example. And so my friend is always saying, you're always in the right place, as if it's something that I don't control. And while
Mm.
there is some element to that, I'm sure, the other element is the way that I describe it in my book is I pay attention and
Yes.
I am not afraid to ask. Now, did I overwhelm that guy right away as an American coming into this Malaysia meeting where he just kind of went, and he was Malaysian. So
Yeah.
at first he was a little surprised, but I was so excited that I was going to be in Bangkok that my excitement overtook my discernment around
Yeah.
maybe
I
don't
love it.
maybe don't ask somebody to host you when you meet them for the first time, especially in another country. But by the time the day was done, that's at the end of the day, he said, here's my contact info. I'm going to email you. And his turns out that he had this whole team. He owned a company and he had his staff pick me up. And then
Oh,
he took me around.
wow.
And the HR women were so funny. Says he had a driver. So I was driving around with these HR women. They go, Mr. So-and-so is, he's rich. What do you want? It was so funny. I mean, it was talk about just this classic Cinderella moment. So
Yeah.
let's go to the store. And then we're driving along the street and he goes, or the woman goes, wait, stop the car. And she looks at me, do you want to ride an elephant?
Oh, that's just so funny.
Ride an elephant, yes. And anyway, my point is that showing up, paying attention,
Mhm.
and not being afraid to ask are such powerful things, and just being a likable person.
Yes.
Finding, and I feel like, again, Lisa, you and I are so aligned in so many ways, being curious, really wanting to understand people. And somebody, I think about when I was a kid, I would say young, maybe an older kid, younger woman,
Yeah.
somebody said, what you always want to imagine is that every human being that you come in contact with has a sign over their forehead that says, make me feel important.
Yes. Oh, I
And
love that.
yeah,
And not be afraid to be messy with them or in front of them or, alongside each other. I feel like that's maybe sometimes, where people almost do the pause where they might have missed that Cinderella moment because they're so busy pausing. And I just assume that if I'm just going to be a little bit me and a little bit maybe messy, right? Like you said, like my excitement overtook me, that there's going to be more that comes of it than if I would have paused. Like there was a moment missed. And I love when you said that because if you can start to realize like in those moments, like it's okay to pause, but really quickly continue to show up, man, doesn't the world just happen differently than kind of creating an orderly, not messy day to day?
yes. Well, and that's such a, again, thing from my childhood. I'm curious about yours, this perfectionism, this need to be perfect, or
Mm,
the expectation to be perfect. And
yeah.
I can remember my mom once making the bed, and she was making it so, I was in early college years and she was making it so perfectly. She kept spreading her hands out over the sheets to make sure there were no wrinkles. And I said, Mom, it doesn't have to be perfect. And without skipping a beat, she said, well, honey, if you don't strive for perfection, you'll always be mediocre.
Oh,
I
yeah.
whoa, that's where all my issues come from.
Yeah, right. Hashtag life lesson, good or bad, we don't know.
And I know what she meant was reaching toward excellence, but the message was so strong for me, especially as a younger child too, that if you shouldn't say anything or you shouldn't do anything unless it's perfect. And it's taken me a lot of years to unlearn that. And to your point, I just love also the alliteration of me and messy, like the, can me and messy, messy and me, they somehow go together nicely. And what, there's nothing wrong with that. And I love that you called that out.
Yeah. I
So
feel like, it's interesting. I don't have as much of the perfectionist, I think, I would say like peace in my pocket, right? But I think I had the achiever piece. My parents were really into like working hard. And so even sometimes I struggle with, you know, almost saying it's okay to just take a few hours off, right? I do joy calendars and we schedule it in, but I'm not great with this like flexible take a few hours off. I think growing up in corporate America also, you sit and you stay till you're done and you work until you're done. And so growing up, I think I carried that. Well, I know I'm not going to be perfect because I'm a little bit messy, but if I can achieve a lot, that will compensate for it. And so it's funny that I tend to be, my husband and I were talking about whether enough is enough,
Mm.
and like what's
Ah,
enough,
yeah.
whether it's like money or joy or work or play or, all the things. And I think that's where I struggle with the enoughness and feeling like, well, there's got to be another thing. Like, we got to do the next thing. And sometimes, I've got a friend and he'll be like, do you ever turn it off? And I'm like, not really. But I think that that's that's like your mom story of like, I always think back to work harder and smarter and achieve more. And there's never enough.
Yeah. So tell me this. Do you celebrate your wins?
Oh, my good friend, I'll have to give my friend Jill a shout out. She is my win like detector. I'll be on the phone with her and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to this session and I'm going to do this thing and da, 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 da." And then she'll say, "What are you doing to celebrate after?" And I'm
Oh,
like, but the great thing about her doing that is she asks me pretty regularly. And so I've started to be better about that. But I think that I have not reached my potential in terms of celebrating wins.
well, it made me think of it because I connect with what you're saying about, okay, what's next? And
Yeah.
I can remember a time when I had hiked the Grand Canyon. I spent 6 months
Oh,
training,
amazing.
and
Wow.
you get up at 3:30 in the morning to make sure you get out there early enough so you can finish. And I remember, it's sort of funny. I remember vividly going back to my hotel room, sitting on the toilet. I still had my hiking boots on, and I thought, what's next?
Isn't that
And
just funny?
yeah, it was that moment I thought, Karen, can you just give your, I mean, it was no more than, maybe an hour since I did that
Yeah.
first thing back, not even shoes off, and I'm already thinking of the next thing. And I'd say that I experienced that a lot with people, or in other words, I feel like there's a lot of people who don't celebrate well. And
Yeah.
it's that intentionality. And I love the term that you use, the wind detector. So, so great to have somebody in your life that reminds you, hey, have you recognized this? And it's kind of like my book. I mean, I never thought I
It's
would write a
huge.
book. It's just, wow. And then realizing how much respect I have for people that do it. But then even when I got it in the mail, everybody does the unveiling, like, oh, I'm going to record
Yeah.
myself. So I set up this video.
You did it. I love it that you did it.
I did, but here's the thing. I don't think I could share it with anybody because here's what it is. Oh, I'm unveiling. Okay, I'm opening the package. Oh, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that is hilarious.
Because I immediately saw, oh, I don't know. I don't know that I like the color as much as I thought, and I've had
Yeah.
people look at it and go, oh my gosh, it looks amazing. But so in other words,
Yeah.
I think about how often like a book doesn't just like, because I had people going, oh my gosh, are you celebrating? And I know that's important. But then there's
Yes.
another part of me that goes, there's so much lead up to it that suddenly it's not like you just decide to write a book today and then tomorrow you have a book. There's so much lead up to it for anything that we're going after. I mean,
Oh,
any
yeah.
whatever goal we have. And so when we reach it, then it feels almost, well, in this case, it was a little anticlimactic, but I'm laughing because I haven't watched the video back, but I think it would be pretty funny because I'm like,
Oh, yeah. Like a little blooper almost.
yes, exactly. Of, oh, here's Karen's first take at her book. Oh, what's wrong with it?
Book number 2, Tough Critic, coming soon, right? Like teaching people how to like move past those barriers. Yeah. Oh, I can relate
Oh my
to
God.
it completely.
So let's shift for a moment of what's the best advice you ever been given?
Ooh, this is good. I think the best advice that I've ever been given would probably be, I'm like battling in my, like I'm arm wrestling in my head between two.
You could say
And
both.
Okay. The first one I would be from one of my first bosses in out of college, and he told this story about how uh, no matter what task you're given, like for example, for him, his I think he must have gotten this from his mentor. If you're gonna make a cup of coffee, make sure it's damn good
Mm,
because you never know who's paying attention to
I
what
love
you're
that.
doing. He goes, a lot more people are paying attention than you realize. And I think that that was so true, especially as being a business owner. I'm now realizing like all this, like just like your book, right? The blood, sweat, and tears that go on behind the scenes. And, how do we make a good cup of coffee and just do our best? And I think it leads to great things. So I think that's my first one.
I love
And
that.
then I'm trying to think of, I think the other one is just work hard and play hard. We said it on my team every day. What do? We work hard and we play hard. Because I think that if you're having enough like work and purpose and helping and giving, and then you get a little like play along the way, it's really the perfect equation. And
Wow.
I think play can also include rest, right? Like some people are like,
Yes.
my best, my idea of a great afternoon is like snuggling up with a book. And I'm like, that's play. Like play doesn't have to be rough and tough. And so I think those are probably like my two, make a damn good cup of coffee and work hard and play hard.
That's wonderful. I love it. And what advice would you give my audience or me? What's your
Yeah.
best
Ooh,
advice?
gosh, that is like semi-official right there. I would say today's your day. That's what I always say. Today's your day to have good ripple effect. If there's something, whether it's personal or professional, it can be small or big. I just ran really quick. My daughter's having a birthday party this afternoon. So
Oh,
it's so
yay.
cute. It's like a unicorn party. She's 8. And I ran to the Dollar Tree to grab some party favors. And it was one of those moments where I was standing in line checking me out, and the woman was so efficient. And I was like, hey, thanks for being efficient. And she goes, yeah, my mom just asked me the other day where I got my cleaning skills from because she's like, it definitely wasn't from her. And I had to laugh and smile because I was like, you know, yeah, it was great. And so I think from a standpoint of having good ripple effect, I think there's more power in it than you know. And so starting now, I give out these little cards and I was looking for one. I wanted to see if I had one laying around. They might all be over on the other side, but I basically give out these cards that say you have good ripple effect. And on the back, it says the world is lucky to have you. And
Oh,
I truly, truly believe it um, because you deserve so much more than you even know. And your day, like today's the day. Like, what ripple effect do you want to have? Whether it's, personal or professional, you can have it.
that's beautiful. Oh, that's a great way to end. I don't want to end, but we need to. So Lisa, what that does feel like a great thing to say, but I do always like to ask this question. Is there
Yeah.
something that I haven't asked yet that you would
Mm.
like me to ask or that you would like to share?
Yeah, okay. I thought of one thing actually now that you say that. So I started my business right before COVID, and I had recently moved from Wisconsin to Iowa, back to Iowa. And when COVID hit and the world shut down, I was like, oh no, I just started this business. How in the world am I going to meet people? And what does the world need? And I realized that the world just needs a little love and a little connection. And so I decided to create every reason about imaginable to connect with good souls. And I now tell people I'm on a mission to meet a million. And I do 1 million interviews or 1 million coffees, and they're 30 minutes long. And so I want to mention that because maybe there's someone listening that is just in need of a little energy or just a good, inspired virtual cup of coffee.
Mm.
And yeah, I would love for you to reach out on social media or my website, lisaeven.com, and find me because I truly do think that my mission to a million, I spend about a fourth of my time doing those coffees. And I tell you what, the ripples that I've gotten from it, just people let me peek into their world and I let them peek into my world. And we find ways to elevate and, yeah, inspire.
That is so beautiful. Lisa, you are such a beautiful person. I am
Aw, thank you.
so glad that we met. How can we find you? You mentioned your website. Anywhere else you
Yes.
want to repeat that again? And we'll have all the links, of course, in the
Yeah,
podcast.
absolutely. So it's Lisa Even, so opposite of odd, lisaeven.com. People are always like, can you say that again? I'm like, yes. And then I'm on social media. So Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram would be great spots to find me or follow me or, schedule a 1 million coffee.
That's beautiful. Well, thanks so much for being here, Lisa. And may you also have good ripple effects.
Aw, thanks, Karen. Have a great day.
Can I say that back to you? I don't know if I'm stealing
Yes,
your tagline.
I love it.
All right. Thanks so much. And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.